Good morning, everyone. Okay, so it's a weekend.
Yes, yes.
Can someone confirm? My voice is audible.
Still,
Yes.
Yeah. So there is no noises, right? My voice is clear.
yes, sir.
Yeah. So so far, as part of object-oriented programming, we discussed what is inheritance and types of inheritances. For example, Narmada, how many types of inheritances available? How many types of inheritances available? Can you list me what are the different type of inheritances at least? Srihari,
Sir,
what are the different type of inheritances we have?
single inheritance, multi-level,
Mhm.
hierarchical, and hybrid inheritance.
Yeah, very good. So we covered that, and we also covered the polymorphism, right? As part of yesterday's discussion, we discussed polymorphism. Polymorphism is nothing but overloading and overriding is the concepts, correct? In Python, by default, compile time polymorphism is not possible, which is overloading is not possible in Python. Because when you duplicated, when you overloaded any constructor or any method, it will not take the old one. It will always take the new one. Okay, so that is the reason overloading is not possible. Overriding is only possible in Python, and overriding possible in the prerequisite. That's a condition. Okay, overriding is only possible only when you are doing an inheritance. If you are not doing inheritance, you are not overriding the functionality of a superclass to subclass. So that is what inheritance is all about. In today's topic, we're going to discuss about encapsulation. So encapsulation is nothing but where you are adding a security layer to your classes and to your data members. In a class, I have few data members. Okay. And those data members, I don't want to access outside of the class. For example, I'm having a class. This class is employee. This employee person is having employee name. Okay, name is Srihari. And his salary is there. He got some good salary. Okay. When I make this and if I execute this class, and if I try to access the variables, all the variables can be accessed outside by default. See here, name, you can access it. An employee dot and salary is access it. Okay. So now what is happening? The variables, the data of this person, the data of this employee has been exposed outside of the classes. Anywhere you can access it as long as you are accessing this class. So because these are static variables, there is no dependent on the object creation. And I'm just using my class name and I'm accessing the variable and that is okay to them. But what Srihari wants is, I'm okay with my name. My name can be accessible, but my salary, I don't want to disclose. What? I don't want to disclose. I don't want to share my salary with others. Understand? So you want a privacy, right? That privacy, how you can implement it. So that is we're going to discuss as part of today's discussion, which is nothing but encapsulation. Okay. By definition, what is encapsulation means? Wrapping the wrapping. Just you take any parcel, right? They wrap it in a cover. Wrapping the data members. Data members means it's a variables. The variables. It can be static variables. It can be instance variables. Okay. All these considered as a data members. Wrapping the data members along with It's data handlers. Data handlers nothing but we call it setter or getter methods. It's a fancy terms, okay? It's a definition. Wrapping the data members along with its data handlers. If somebody asks you what is data handlers is nothing but we are providing setter and getter methods. Okay, it's called encapsulation. Okay, that is all encapsulation is all about. Okay, before jumping into the encapsulation, I want to discuss one small topic. One small topic. Okay, this topic is nothing but variables. Based on what? Access. Okay. So far, let me just open my OneNote. Yeah, so I have my notes here. So what is happening here is we have types of variables. We have variables. These variables based on scope means the where you can access it. Where you can access it. We call it as global variable and local variable. Okay, so let me zoom it more. In the variables, based on a scope, we call it as global variables and local variables. Inside of a class, we have what? Instance variables, static variables, and local variables. Okay. In access modifiers, we have public, private, and protected. These are the different type of variables which we have. These are the different type of variables which is available in Python. If somebody asks you what is global variable, you just define it inside a Python script, inside a Python file, you can define it. It can be accessible at anywhere. That's a global variable. If it is if variable is declared inside of a function, if a variable is declared inside of a function, that's a local variable, correct? So for example, based on scope, if I'm defining a variable which is x is equal to 100, now this is a global variable. I can access it wherever I want it, correct? Now what I'm doing, I'm declaring a function, test function. In this test function, I'm declaring a variable called y is equal to 200, and I can print it. And if this y can be accessed inside of, can be accessed inside of test function only. Test function only, right? So now this becomes what? Local variable. Even outside of a test function, if I want to access x, I can access, no issues. But can I try to access y? If I try to access y, it will get, there is no such variable where you declared it. Making sense? If it's a global variable and local variable. I know I covered this topic. I'm just refreshing it. I'm not sure whether you guys remember the concept. So I'm just remembering it. I'm just doing a quick revision. Okay. So that is what your global and local variables. Next, what we are having inside of a class, we have three type of variables. Let's just do this. I'm having a class, which is test class. These are the static variables. and I'm having a constructor, which is init. Instance variables. Okay, so if a variable which is declared inside of a class, I'm declaring inside of a class and outside of a methods. So these are outside of a methods or constructors. So those variables called static variables, and it can be accessible in throughout the class. Throughout the class, you can access it wherever you want it. Okay, you can use class name as a reference. Again, you can access those variables. For example, here in the check function, I want to access a variable A. Use the class name test dot A. You can access that. Then how about B? If you want to access B, print test, put control plus spacebar. Okay, we'll get B. Getting it? So this is how a static variables can be accessed. And if anything which is relevant to self, if I'm using any variable declaration, I'm doing a variable declaration with a self. Using self, I'm declaring a variable x comma y. That is 100 and 200. So this variable called instance variable. I declared a variable which is inside of a function, but it is not dependent on any self object. I declared a variable which is z. It is not any relationship with the self. It's just a local, it's just a variable. This variable is what? Local variable. Right? So if I execute this, I have no concerns. If you use a class name, how you can access a static variables? Use a class name, put it there, no? Then you can access it. Give the variable name and you can access it. Clear? But if you want to access instance variables, you have to use your object creation. T is equal to test. This I'm not taking any constructor, no, any arguments to my constructor. So I don't have to pass any arguments. And using a object reference, call that x, p dot x, p dot y. Here. Sir, how about by using object reference, can I call the static variables? You have shown me with a class name, you can access A and B. Those are the static variables. What about if I am using object reference and I'm accessing those static, just static variables with a object reference? Yes, it is possible. Instead, static variables can be accessed by either class name or either object reference. Both the things is possible. Here. Now, if you want to call your local, this function, let's call this check function. T dot check. Okay. So you printed Z variable and you are accessing, which is global, which is a static variables A comma B inside of a check, right? But if I want to access Z, Z cannot be accessed at anywhere outside of a check method itself. Outside of a check method, you cannot create it or you cannot access it. So those are local variables, right? So this is how is static and instance and local variables will be created. Any doubts? Anyway, I covered these topics. I'm just doing a revision. Now, what is the last one which is pending? The last one is public, private, and protected variables. Among this variable declaration, I'm going to define which is public, private, and protected variables. I'm having a class. This is a test class. Okay, so I used test. Okay, fine. Let's use the same class name. No issues. I'm declaring a global variable, which is protected. Sorry, I'm declaring static variables only. I'm declaring static variables. These static variables itself, I'm giving the access modifiers. So what I'm saying, based on these are what? Public, private, protected what? Access modifiers. I'm defining the access modifiers to my static variables. So for example, static variables what? A is equal to 100, B is equal to 200, C is equal to 300. All these are what? Static variables inside of my test class. Okay, I don't have any concern. But the thing is, I want to add access modifiers to it. By default, by default, a access modifiers will be implemented, which is public. Which is public. All these are public variables. So that is the reason outside of your class also you can access it. Let's execute this. All are public access. So even if I use print tester.a, tester.b, tester.c, I'll get the result. Now what I want to do is I want to define the access. Now what I'm making is, let's take the same class. To the same class, let's add the different access now. If you're not giving anything here, it's just declaring a variable name. That's a what? Public. This is public. And if whenever you are declaring a variable, you just give one single underscore. It's underscore, okay? When you define single underscore, this becomes protected. And when you're declaring a variable, you give double underscore, this becomes private. Very simple. Okay. If you like not like any other programming language where you have to define default, public, private, you don't have to use any keywords. You just use underscore, that's it. If you use a single underscore, that's a protected. If you use a double underscore, that's a private. Okay, that is a private. If once I do this and let me execute this now, what happens is public variables can be accessed anywhere as long as you are using class name. You can access it. But protected also similarly work like that. There is no issues, you can access it. But private is something, it is my personal, it is my privacy. I'll not allow you to access outside. If it is a inside of a class, you can access. But outside of a class, I'll not allow. Let me show you what I mean. For example, test class, right? I'm using a public one, test.a. Clear? Now what I'm doing, test._b. Clear? Now what I'm doing, test _c. It's a private variable, right? If you are trying to access the private variable, see what happens. Now it is saying that C is a private variable and you cannot access it. And why it says is, for example, you're trying to access a C variable, it is not defined itself because Python will not think it is created outside. But if you want to access inside of a class, you can access. For example, inside of a class, I'm declaring a static method. Declare static method. Check private. Okay. So now what I'm doing, print, use class name, _c. _c. Let me re-execute this. Now what I'm doing, you call that check private method. Test dot check private. Getting it? You are getting the C value 300 inside of a class. When you access inside of a class can be accessible. Only outside of a class, it cannot be accessed. So the scope, you are just defining the access now. Okay. Private variables can be accessed only inside of a class. Outside can be accessed. Okay. Any doubts up to now? So I have shown you there is a three type of variables based on its scope. You have global and local. If it's inside of a class, you can define three types. So inside of a class, you have three types of variables. If it is inside of a class itself, you can add access modifiers to it, whether it can be accessed outside or not. Okay, so these are the different type of variables which we have. Any doubts so far? If it is clear, so can someone ping in the chat?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you. So you just have to understand one small thing, that's it. Here, if you don't have any underscores, it's just a public variable. If you are having a single underscore, it's a protected. If you are having a double underscore, it's a private. Private variables cannot be accessed outside. That is all you just have to know. Okay. Now what I'm doing is to this private variables, if you want to access outside, I'm going to generate a setter and getter methods for it. I'm going to generate what? Setter and getter methods for it. If you want to access these private variables now, don't directly access it. For example, here I'm directly accessing it. So that is the reason you are not getting it. For this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to generate a setter and getter methods for it. What I mean is, for example, right, if you are seeing a test class, in the test class, I'm having variable a is equal to 100, right? Test is test of a. I can access it. Since I have an access, so then only I'm getting a value 100. Now, if I want to change the value of a, I want to change the value of a to 1000. Can I do this? Yes. Now do a test dot a. Now a value changed. I can able to set the variable. I can able to set the variable, or I can able to access the variable, which is set and get. If you are able to access it, there's a get. If you are able to set it, there's a set. So for that, these private variables, once you make a private variables, you cannot access it outside, right? For that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a setter method and getter methods. I'm going to create what? A setter method and getter method. Okay. For example, let me show you if it is inside of it. Now, as part of the static variables, this is fine. Then what about a instance variables? Most commonly we use instance variables only now. So in order to create an object, now def create employee init using self, taking name and salary. Now what I'm doing is while declaring an instance variables, I make name is equal to public variable. Then if you want to access a salary, I'm making as a private. It's a double underscore salary. Okay, let's execute this. EMP is equal to employee one. And his employee Sriram. And his salary is this. 90,000 is salaries. EMP1 dot control plus space bar. Only name. See here, when I put dot control plus space bar, you are getting only name. You're not getting salary. You can access the name. And you can, if you try to access the salary, okay, see here what it says. There is no such thing. Okay. So for this kind of variables, this kind of private variables, how you can access it outside of a class. So that is, we're gonna do what? Setter and getters. We're gonna do what? Setter and getters. For this salary, I'm gonna do get salary. I'm gonna add a method is salary. You are accessing what? You are making this salary as an instance variable. You declare what? If it is relevant to self, it is instance variables. So then earlier, when I tried to access the static variables, I just declared what? Static method. I want to access a static variables. I just create a static method. Then if I want to access a instance variable, I need to access what? Instance method. I'm creating instance method, get salary. If you want to return that value, right? Let me return that value. Self dot what you want, salary, right? Okay, fine. Done. Now what I'm doing, EMP1. So now this is EMP2, employee 2. And this employee, his name is Hanuman. And he's having very big salary. Starting to, okay. EMP2 dot control plus space bar, you get only name. Okay. But if you want to access a salary, it's a private variable. You cannot access it, right? It's a private variable. But if you want to access it, I declared a getter method. I declared what? A getter method. I declared what? A getter method. Go and access this salary with a getter method. EMP2 and access that get salary. Get salary. Then you can able to get it. If you're directly accessing a salary, it is not possible. I make it as a private. You cannot directly access it. But if you want to access it now, I created a getter for you. Go and get it. Use that getter method. Okay. If I want to change, I want to set it. You are having setter method and getter method, right? You are doing only getter. If you want to change the salary, now he got an increment. Now he got increment. Now his salary becomes, okay. So now his salary becomes, let's go 2 lakhs, right? Now his salary becomes 2 lakhs 20,000. Now his salary becomes 2 lakhs 20,000. Now then how I have to do it? For that, you have to do what? You have to generate a getter method for it. You have to generate a setter method. Def set salary. Take one variable. What is the latest salary you want to add it? What is the latest salary? Self dot double underscore salary is equal to what is the its latest salary? That's it. This is setter. Okay. So now the same employee, right? Employee 2. Take this person and Hanuman and just paste it here and execute this. Now EMP2 dot control plus space bar. You have only name. As a variable, you can access only name. But if you want to access a salary, use a getter method. So you are having getter salary what? 2 lakhs. Now annual cycle is came and he got increment of 10%. The 10% is 2 lakhs 20,000. His salary is going to be. Now I have to change his salary. How you can do it? Set salary. I generated what? A setter, right? So his salary is 2 lakhs 20,000. I set it. Now you access it. Get salary. You get his latest salary, right? This is how you're gonna create your setter method and getter methods for your private variables. The way you are generating a getter method and setter method for your private variables is all about encapsulation. That is all encapsulation. Nothing simple. This is all where you have to know as part of encapsulation. What is encapsulation? Wrapping the data members with its data handlers. The data handlers is what? The setter and getter methods. We call it as encapsulation. And how you can achieve encapsulation? Just make a variable as a private variables. So it cannot be accessed outside directly. And for private variables, you generate a setter method and getter method for in order to access and you wanna change. For changing, you're doing a setter, you wanna getting, you're having a getter method. Any doubts in this encapsulation?
No, no, sir.
Are we good?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.